Hey everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Tim.
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Great. I am doing both well and good, as has been very well documented on the show. I feel like there's another being in the room right now.
Whoa!
And I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
There's a giant owl staring at me right now, and I'm feeling a little bit creeped out. I suspect there probably is some level of, I don't know if it's symbolism or is there anything here to this, or am I just losing my mind?
I just really like this shirt.
Okay.
And also, Aleister Crowley has OWL right in the middle of his name.
I don't get it. Break that down for me.
That's pretty cool. How you spell owl is. Hey, we need to send a huge shout out, a big thank you to Lynn, the Lintern Lynn.
The Lintern.
Makes a triumphant return.
Yes.
And knocks it out of the park because
That's sweet.
this is, okay. I knew nothing about Aleister Crowley going into this. Yeah. And it's like, okay, he was a guy, magic maybe. I don't,
sure,
the beast,
sure. Spiritualism, something like that. Yeah.
And I was like, this would be a really good episode. Can you help me? She's like, yes. And she sends me so much information. I'm like, oh my God. So at the outset, first of all, thank you, Lynn. And second of all, there is so much that you can talk about with Aleister Crowley.
Okay.
And I am not like saying that, and this isn't even a way of me like trying to like lower the bar, lower the expectations. But I legitimately think you could do an episode a day for a year and probably still have new stuff to talk about every single time.
Why?
I am not like, that's not even like exaggerating or being facetious. This guy was so wild. He was so out there. There are so many stories and so many connections to and from him that it is impossible to cover even a fraction of it in one episode. So let's give it a try.
That being said, let's just do it right now.
Also, what we should also say is that maybe there should be some sort of warning, some sort of parental guidance thing.
Yeah.
I know we do have a number of young listeners. There's some weird stuff in this that he did that it is impossible not to talk about. So if you're at all on the fence, maybe listen to it first and then tell your kids if you can listen to it, or just don't. And I don't know.
Download it twice. Rate, review, subscribe. Check out all the sponsors of the show, buy their products, and then decide, right?
Right. So anyway, with those caveats, let's try to jump into this. Aleister Crowley, born Edward Alexander Crowley. What do you know about him?
Almost zilch, honestly. Yeah. So to me, it's like I put him in that category of people that it's like, what is it? Magicians, spiritualists, clairvoyants.
Sure.
I don't know, hucksters, something. I've heard this name a million times.
Yes.
I've done almost no research and or looking into who this guy was. So like, you're
aware
blind.
that he existed in this realm over here, and you're like, okay, that's there.
Yeah.
And you just kind of move on.
And it's surprising to me, given the fact that we host a conspiracy theory podcast in which we talk about paranormal stuff, that this hasn't really come up yet.
It really hasn't come up yet.
Yeah. So,
Okay. I was kind of right there with you. So he had a couple nicknames. Maybe you've heard of these before. The wickedest man in the world. And also he would refer to himself as the Great Beast 666.
I hope that was like tongue in cheek, because that's great.
No, like,
what?
yes.
No way.
Yes.
All right.
I judge for yourself, but no, that's not.
I thought that was hyperbole, but
no, not really.
Okay.
He's a wild guy. So, like I said, born Edward, I am going to consistently refer to him as Aleister because it's just easier that way, and we'll talk about when he decides to change his name when it comes. But born October 12th, 1875 in Lymington, England.
Bloody England.
That's the one. He's named after his father, who was also named after his father.
Classic move.
You betcha. So the grandfather, if you will, was a very, very wealthy man. Made a lot of money brewing Crowley's Alton Ales.
Sounds delicious.
So Aleister's father, basically by the time Aleister was born, he didn't have to work. He could retire and did retire, a very wealthy man. And I tried to do a little bit of research, like what would it be in today's like US dollars? And we're talking like pounds to dollars in like different centuries. And it's like, I don't know.
You're doomed.
I have no.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no real record keeping that I can find necessarily, but the man was very wealthy.
Sure. Fair enough.
I would say maybe as a ballpark, like $100 million, maybe more.
That wealthy?
Oh, you're very wealthy.
Okay, fair enough.
Very well off. Yeah.
It sounds almost like maybe perhaps they're also like not royalty, but like, you know.
Oh, upper class.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Definite upper class folk. So his father, he was they were a Quaker family, and then his father fell in and decided to become a. They were referred to as the Brethren. So this is a fundamentalist Christian religion, and he also decided to become a self-appointed preacher of the Brethren.
Okay. Real quick question too.
Yeah.
So sorry, what years are we talking about here? So like roughly
he was born in 1875. So we're talking
last half of the 19th century. Got
exactly.
It. Okay.
So time and a place.
The last half, the second half.
And the Brethren, I mean, they have their nuances and their whatnot. And I'll be honest, it seems like almost any other kind of fundamentalist Christian organization with a strong focus on the literal truth of the scriptures and the second coming.
Okay.
And I mean, they had some things about dressing, very plain garb, and also like, don't celebrate things, and like
sure.
Be very modest in your ways. But so his father would travel around the countryside and spread the gospel and preach, and Aleister came with him even when he was very young, and would listen to his father talk and preach and spread the gospel. And as a young boy, he was a firm believer that the Brethren was the one and only true religion. I mean, which makes perfect sense, because that's probably all he was exposed to, and his father's a preacher, and no one's going to hold that against him. But he was very devout as a young boy that this is it. And at 8 years old, Aleister is going to Eber Preparatory School in Cambridge, England, which was run by this guy who Aleister later described as being an evil sadist. So think of a, 1880 English, preparatory school full of English boys, and this guy was just routinely using corporal punishment on the kids, and Aleister especially, because he had a bit of a mouth on him.
Sure.
And he was beaten, he was punished, he was placed in solitary confinement. Wow. It just, nasty stuff. Only fed bread and water, that kind of thing. And not too long after that, when Aleister was 11, his father died of tongue cancer. Which, let's just pause for a quick moment and talk about the irony of that. You have someone whose job, quote unquote, is to spread the gospel by talking, and then he dies of tongue cancer.
I see where you're going with that. Sure.
I don't want to play Freud too much, but I have to believe that was not lost on young Aleister, or maybe older Aleister.
Right. Yep. Okay.
So father dies. Guess who becomes very wealthy?
Aleister, right? So he got the family inheritance, more or less, right?
He got the family inheritance, which was huge and could easily pay for a lifetime of leisure.
Leisure or leisure?
Well, I don't know. We're in England, so...
Okay, fair enough.
So after his dad dies, he and his mother, who, by the way, was the stricter of the two. She was a disciplinarian. He did not get along with his mother as well as he did his father. He idolized his father. He looked up to him, and then he dies, of course. Very tragic, very sad. He has to live with his mother, who he doesn't, even at a young age, get along with that well. They go and they live with her brother, so his uncle, and he kind of takes a look at the schooling situation, pulls him out of school, especially after he came home not came home, but he developed this kidney disease. And then he goes to school and he tells probably the headmaster's like, hey, I got a kidney disease. And the kids find out. And what do? They like pin him down to the ground and just like punch him. Yeah.
Gosh, kids are so stupid
kids are
sometimes.
awful.
Yeah, they are. Wow. Sorry, kids.
So his uncle's like, yeah, okay, we're done. We're pulling you out. And he employs a number of tutors. He's like, we're gonna get you all learned up. And he's learning Greek, he's learning mathematics, he's learning English literature, and he's doing really well. Like, come to find out, this guy is smart.
Sure.
Like, really smart. And on top of it, he's taking them out. He's doing hiking and fishing and mountain climbing. Come to find out, like, we could do a whole series of episodes about his mountain climbing career.
Seriously?
Seriously. Like,
okay.
This guy, he didn't successfully scale K2 at the time, but like no one had up to that point. But he like several attempts at the summit of K2.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just well, I'm sure he wasn't doing it when he was 11 necessarily, but right. He learns the skill and he's getting pretty good at it. One of his tutors, Archibald Douglas, introduces Aleister to some other education. We're talking gambling.
Oh, okay.
Billiards, and what's the polite way to say ladies of the night?
Okay.
So he takes that up as well.
I see.
He rather enjoys it. He goes back to school. They find out he has an STD and he gets kicked out.
Huh.
So Aleister loses his virginity at the age of 15 to one of these ladies, and he said it basically ended the, quote, nightmare world of Christianity, end quote, for him.
Sure.
So you can think of this kid that like was brought up very strict, very disciplinarianism, like pleasure's not a thing that we enjoy because our pleasure's in the afterlife, that sort of thing. And he's like, oh, wait, what? Yeah. Enough of that. I want more of this.
Okay.
Basically, after that point, he said it began a period of, quote, boundless happiness inside of him. Like he just kind of became a new person. He just found joy all around him and in certain ladies. One day, he was at home. Family was out. Except I guess someone came home. He was caught in bed, in his mother's bed, with the chambermaid. He was punished. She was fired. She was forced to take up a life of prostitution in order to, survive. Come to find out, she would become the first of the 5 Whitechapel murders committed by Jack the Ripper.
Really?
Really.
Okay.
Yeah. There's even more Jack the Ripper connection with Aleister.
What?
He says that he knew exactly who Jack the Ripper was because he came to him and like gave him 5 bloody scarves and like talked about the victims and even gave him a tour of his house where he showed these candles made from human fat.
Okay. I'm just like,
this
is crazy.
This is crazy. And he's still like 15 at this point, just so you know. Okay. So anyway, he goes to college. He goes to Trinity at Cambridge, 1895. So he's, 19, 20 years old at this point. This is when he officially changes his name from Edward to Aleister. I don't know that there was any sort of legal thing he did, but he's like, just introduces himself as Aleister and, this is my name. From that point forward, gets there. He rarely leaves his room. He doesn't go to lecture, and he does surprisingly well on all exams because he's just wicked smart.
He's that guy.
He's that guy.
Okay.
But he also just plays at least a minimum of 2 hours of chess every single day, decides to join the chess club on a lark, beats the school grand, chess champion, and for a while, like, seriously contemplates becoming a grandmaster as a career and just doing that. But he's like, no, I think I'll just do something else because that's the kind of guy I am.
I wish I could do that too.
Didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, but too political, right?
We can't get into that now. Okay. So he goes to Stockholm on New Year's Eve, 1897, just, celebrating with friends or whatever it might be. And on that evening, he has an experience that changes his entire life. He was asleep in his hotel room close to midnight, and he says, I'm going to read this here, I became astutely aware that I possessed a magical means of becoming conscious of something inside of me. I could release a side of my nature that I didn't know existed. It was a painful, terrifying, and horrific experience, and yet at the same time, it seemed to be the answer. It seemed so pure and spiritual. My path had been chosen. So basically, he has like the opposite of like a, I saw the light kind of moment,
Sure. Okay.
Like I don't want to say he saw the darkness or something, but he's like, he says he became aware that he possessed magic and he was a magical creature, a spiritual being that had this power. Coincidentally or not, this was the same night in which he had his first same-sex intimate experience.
Okay.
And he finally accepted and embraced that he was bisexual.
Sure.
Which was not something that was probably openly talked about in, 1897 in polite company, I think we could safely say.
Sure.
But he has this experience, he has this revelation, and this is basically the event that gives Aleister, in his mind, his life's purpose. And he decides that he's going to become a master of the secret art of the occult. And he's just going to, this is him.
So he had some sort of like self-awakening, revelation, basically, in which he kind of like discovered himself, more or less.
I guess so.
In Stockholm, like in the middle of the night.
Yeah, on New Year's Eve.
Respect.
Have you ever heard of the Golden Dawn?
No.
Okay, so this was once considered like the esoteric society to belong to. So they, they were devoted to the study and practice of the occult, of metaphysics, of the paranormal activities. And to give you just kind of like a brief outline of like who were members, at least in England at the time. I mean, you have famous actors and actresses. You have novelists like Arthur Machen. You have William Yeats, the poet.
Sure.
You have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
You have Edith Bland. I mean, all these like upper crust people that are all part of this magic society studying spells and magic and the occult and the paranormal with these, cloaks and candles and secret things. And he's like, this is where I got to go. These are my people. I need to learn how to do this now. I have to harness this within me. Right. And he goes and he basically, so without going into too much detail, there's the Golden Dawn, right? And you start at the bottom, and then there's like 3 kind of like tiers, right? And within each tier, there's like maybe a dozen levels. And you can't go from A to B to B to C without passing it, without, passing the tests and learning the memorization of these things. And I don't know all the details, but you get the gist. He blew through it, like just boom. He got through the first tier, and he's like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do, bring on tier 2.
Sure.
But in order to get to the second level, there was a 7-month waiting period. Just regardless of how fast you completed it, you just had to wait your turn.
Okay.
In addition to that, you also needed the blessing of the like Grand High Master, like the head of the Golden Dawn, to say, yes, you are worthy to learn the next steps. Well, he didn't like either of those things because he liked what he liked and he wanted what he wanted. And as you will learn, he would just do whatever he could to get what he wanted. And he's like, well, forget that noise. So he basically finds a workaround. He becomes friends with the second-ranking member. So not the president, but the vice president, more or less, who was equally like smart and equally good, and he knew everything, and he was a really good teacher. But he latched onto this guy. His name was Charles Henry Allen Bennett. And he's like, hey, I noticed that you're living in this kind of like not so great apartment. I got this huge place right downtown, and it's really lonely. Like, it'd be great if you could just, move in with me if you don't mind. And he's like, sure. Then he finds out that he has asthma. And Aleister's like, I have asthma too, which he did. But he's like, well, hey, the way to beat asthma, because it is 1898 after all, and we know that we got to basically find morphine, opium, cocaine, and chloroform, which are all perfectly legal, but also kind of expensive. But hey, I also got asthma.
Okay.
Come on over. Let's hang out.
Yeah.
You're here. Why don't you just teach me some of the spells? I mean, what can it hurt,
Nice little workaround.
So they become pretty good buds, and like within days, they are literally doing spells to summon demons and consecrate talisman, and like they are doing quote mind altering drugs to like get in the right state of mind to do this stuff, and they're doing like actual like dark evil magic.
Dark arts.
They're practicing the dark arts.
I see.
Like quite literally. This dude, Mr. Bennett, he kind of got freaked out and through a whole other series of events, and this could be another spin-off, but he goes to India and becomes a Buddhist monk, and later is largely credited with bringing Buddhism to the Western world. But they remain friends, like, for the rest of both of their lives.
It's pretty cool.
They kept in touch.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the Golden Dawn finds out about the black magic. They find out about his sexual exploits with both genders. Gasp. And they're like, yeah, you can't be a part of our super secret club. You're done. You're out. And Aleister's like, fine, forget this. I'm going to go learn magic on my own.
Start my own club, right?
I'm going to go start my own club and my own religion, and it's going to be a lot cooler than the Golden Dawn.
Right. So before we go any further here, I do have a question. So like what is meant here like by magic? Like what is magic?
Yeah.
Like what is it? Like what are you talking about here?
So they get a deck of cards, okay?
The old penny out of the ear trick.
Penny out of the ear.
Whoa.
Like,
got your nose.
Get to the second tier, it was like a penny out of each ear.
It's next level.
Yeah. No, I mean, so the way, okay, great question. I had the same question, and the way Aleister describes it, two quotes. He says, magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with your will. So simply said, making stuff happen.
Sure. Bending spoons with your mind.
Yeah, kinda. And also summoning demons and, cool stuff like that. He also said magic is getting into communication with individuals who exist on a higher plane than ours, aka spiritualism.
I was going to say, it sounds just like that, doesn't it?
Exactly. So it's learning how to harness that. It's learning how to do that. And the other thing you need to understand is that at the time, there really isn't such a thing as like stage magic, like Penn and Teller, David Copperfield.
Sure.
Like that doesn't exist really. It's not a thing. And so when we're talking about magic, and the other thing I should mention is that he spells magic with a K, so it's Magick. So it's not anything different necessarily. He liked the way it looked. He liked the way it sounded, I guess. He also liked the fact that it was 6 letters as opposed to 5, because numbers are very important, and 6 is just 1/3 of 666 and all these things as well. But it's not like throwing, frog's eyes and like the heart of a newt into a boiling cauldron and saying a couple things and like stirring it counterclockwise under a full moon. We're talking long, arduous, like days and weeks and sometimes even months long, like incantations and just states of mind and states of being that you need to have in order to, what did he say? Make change occur in conformity with your will. And surprise, I've never actually done these. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you haven't either.
Tried, but failed.
You're right. It was not part of the law school bar exam. But I have to imagine that to some degree this worked.
Well, yeah. Or he was persistent. Trying to get it to work, right?
I mean, people devoted their whole lives to this. And I have to imagine, no matter how persistent you are, after a decade of nothing happening, you're just going to give up and become a mountain climber, right?
Sure.
Because what are you actually doing?
Sure.
The other thing to talk about, and this is kind of where some of the PG-13/R maybe comes into this, is something called sex magic, which is also the name of Zach's cover band.
There were so many jokes I was going to make, and I was like, I'll refrain. For once,
I'm above that.
I'll sit this one out, and then there we go.
There we go. Couldn't let it go. Sex magic. What do I say? It's basically, here it's come to this. It's using the sexual energy and orgasmic release during specific times during these rituals as a sort of like a power booster. So the idea is that when the orgasm occurs, your mind is, in a certain state, and you're that much closer to the, I don't want to say God necessarily with a capital G, but like the all powerful part of the universe.
Sure.
And you are able to like speak and summon and communicate at a different level than you were otherwise.
Got it.
And while some of his spells only required one person, most of his spells required 2 or 3 or 12 or more people.
I see where this is going. Okay. Yep.
We can more or less leave it at that for now. That'll come back. But that is basically what I mean by magic.
Sure.
Or at least what Aleister means by magic.
Why is that funny to me? I have no idea.
Because we never got out of 7th grade, I guess.
Yeah.
There is one very famous magical operation that he did. It was called the Aiwass operation. And he found it in the Book of Sacred Magic by Abram Alin the Mage. This is like from the 12th century. It had been, allegedly like passed down for centuries and like transcribed, and more or less, depending on how you interpreted it or the different translation, it could last anywhere between 6 and 18 months.
What is it exactly, though?
It is a way to summon and commune with one's own guardian angel.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, actually.
So, and we're not talking guardian angel like with the big white wings or sitting on your shoulder necessarily. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the thing in the other realm, on the other side of the veil, that like looks after you.
Sure.
That you will meet when you die. And this is a way for you to talk to that being, like literally actually talk to that being.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he needs a very specific place. He needs a very specific location. So what does he do with all his money and free time? He goes to Loch Ness and he buys a manor. And this is called the Manor of Boleskine. And he buys it with the very specific intention of using at least one part of this very enormous manor to do this operation, this grand spell to summon his guardian angel, more or less. And during his time there, he claimed to have evoked numerous demons and infested the lodge and terrace with, quote, shadowy shapes, which then escaped into the main house and wreaked havoc. So he had help. He had probably a butler and, cleaning staff and a cook. And, the guy's wealthy and it's a big house and he's spending all day doing the magic. He needs people to do the basic upkeep. One house servant would quit because he was completely unable to handle the sinister atmosphere of the place. Another one suffered fits of delirium tremens, DTs, like the shakes that you get if you're an alcoholic and you quit drinking, although this person was a complete teetotaler. But as long as they were there, they couldn't stop shaking. It was just so evil, and this just veil enveloped the place. Another housekeeper or maid or whoever it was would go just clinically insane and try to kill Aleister, and he fought her off and then sent her away. So it's doing something.
Something's going on there, yeah.
At least to the people's psyches, you know.
Okay, but and the important thing here is it's not just occurring or impacting him. It's other people that have nothing to do with what he's
over this whole place.
Wow.
Funny story. This you may actually know this, Zach. So this place, this Boleskine Manor, it changes hands several times after he owned it. Most notably owned by the lead guitarist of Led Zeppelin.
All right, Jimmy Page, baby.
That's right. He
buys
on the
show.
He buys it in 1971. Jimmy Page, huge Aleister Crowley aficionado. He went around and collected just tons of Aleister Crowley things.
Well, I'm thinking about their cover art, right? And there's the Zoso stuff and all the triangles and everything. That's cool. So
Jimmy Page loved magic. He also loved heroin and underage girls and mud sharks, but that's a different story.
Yes.
Did you ever read Hammer of the Gods?
No.
Dude, that's a trip. But anyway, Jimmy was big into this stuff. He bought it, and Jimmy Page asked his childhood friend to kind of be the caretaker while he was out, touring the world, being probably one of the greatest guitar players of all time. And his friend brought his wife and his kids, and they're just, it's whatever.
Recipe for disaster.
But this place had fallen into disrepair. So this was 1971. I think, Aleister sold it in the 20s or even earlier than that. So the place was down and bad. And he's like, come in, fix it up, live here. It's all good. It's great. It's grand. And there was a night when his friend was there all alone. His family was gone. His kids were gone. He was sound asleep in his bed, and he was woken up with this just snarling and growling outside of his bedroom door. And his door was closed, he said, thank God. But he's like, I know what a dog sounds like. I know what a bear sounds like. I know what a wolf sounds like. These are all things I know. And he said, this thing didn't exist in this world.
Sounds like a demon almost, right?
Well, right. And he said it was the most terrifying night of his life, but it was just clawing and growling and banging on the door. And he was just like, what do you do? And eventually it gets quiet. The sun comes up. It's been quiet long enough. He gets the courage up. He opens up the door. He looks at the other side. There's absolutely nothing there.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So anyway,
that's troubling.
One of the wilder stories as far as that's concerned. So he finishes this grand operation to talk to his guardian angel, I guess,
being
more or less.
Or something.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It kind of sounded like he was disappointed, more or less. But it's whatever. No big deal.
You're not that good of a guardian angel,
Well, no, I mean, it didn't sound like it really achieved what he wanted.
Didn't produce results that he was expecting.
Yeah, that he was expecting, or that he wanted, at least at the time. So he goes, he gets married, which is a whole nother story that we're just going to have to gloss over here. And on his honeymoon with his bride, they decide to go to Egypt. What do you do when you're in Egypt? You go see the Great Pyramid.
That's right.
What do you do when you're Aleister Crowley and you got a ton of money? Well, you actually get to go into the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Isn't it cursed?
Well, not a lot of people have been inside of it. Not a lot of people have been inside of it alone for to spend the night or do whatever they want while they're there. Mm-hmm. Notable figures, Napoleon and Hitler.
Fair enough. Okay.
Also, coincidentally, both considered like the Antichrist. Aleister Crowley's another one that some consider the Antichrist.
Self-proclaimed.
Self-proclaimed, sure, yeah. Funny side comment on that. I'll try to make this quick. Napoleon spent the night in the king's chamber, and he came out just as white as a ghost. And someone's like, what happened? What did you see? And he's like, I refuse to talk about it. Don't ever ask me about it. This never happened.
No.
To his deathbed, to his literal deathbed, he would not talk about it. Finally, someone at his deathbed said, do you want to talk about it? Like, I know you couldn't, but this is my last chance. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And he starts to talk, and he just stops himself, and he goes, you know what? No, you wouldn't believe me.
Oh.
Right.
I am dying to find out. Dude, that sounds insane.
It sounds insane. So
I want to know what it was.
Back to Aleister Crowley with his bride. They are doing magic in the king's chamber. A very mystical experience occurs. She goes into a trance, and she just starts saying, they're waiting for you, they're waiting for you, they're waiting for you. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm trying to do my magic stuff here.
Exactly, yeah.
And she just won't stop saying it. Finally, she snaps out of it. She's like, follow me. She goes to the nearby museum and walks straight to the exhibit of Horus, the god, and says, that is who I saw. Aleister looks at the exhibit number. Do you want to guess what the exhibit number is?
666.
They're exactly right.
Wild.
2 weeks later, he hears a disembodied voice, and he's like, this is not in my mind. It came from a very specific location. It was actually over my left shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, I heard this voice very clearly speak to me. And it was Aiwass, Aiwass, his guardian angel.
I also had one of those CD players in the early 90s.
Oh, boy. What do you want to tell me more? But he says he's a messenger of the god Horus. He is Aleister's guardian angel. And pick up a pen and paper, buddy, because I got some stuff I need to tell you. And for the next 3 days, Aiwass tells him just this, well, basically, what Aleister does is he dictates this, and what he says becomes the book of the law. And the book of the law later becomes the central text for Aleister Crowley's religion, which is called Thelema. And to sum it all up into one or two brief, what is this religion? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Another way to say that?
Do whatever you want. And just do it, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That's the super, super dumbed down version, right?
Yeah.
The second kind of codice, the second commandment, if you will, is love is the law, love under will. But to expand on that just a little bit, each person has a true will.
Sure.
They have one thing that they are destined to do, that they have to do, and they need to figure out what that is. And once they figure out what that is, everything in their life needs to be devoted one way or another to doing that.
Interesting.
Stay tuned next week when we talk about Jack Parsons, who was a disciple, more or less, of Aleister Crowley, who basically said his will was to put a man on the moon, and more or less through magic invented like rocket science, scientry. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's happening. Anyway, the other thing I have to talk about when it comes to Aleister Crowley is Lam, Lam. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay. There's just so much to choose from when it comes to him, but because you know what I love. What do I love? Talking about? More than anything else?
Aliens.
That's right. Okay. I maybe tip my hand too far in this, but anyway, January to March 1918 now. Aleister and his girlfriend now, they set out to do a ritual called the Amalatra working, which is basically to bring a physical manifestation of a number of quote, non-human intelligences, okay? So they want to bring these things that exist on a different plane, not our plane, but a different plane.
Sure.
And they want to bring them to this plane and talk to them and meet them and just have a conversation with them. And they get done with this working, this magical spell, more or less. And there's like a room full of these intelligences, okay? And his girlfriend is acting as a medium at the time. And, you know, we both more or less know how the other one feels about mediums.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's talking to these different things and learning stuff and writing it down and asking them deep, wise questions that only Aleister Crowley could ask, you know. Except there's one that gets through that doesn't talk through her. He claims and she claims that this being who called himself Lamb actually physically manifests itself in the room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he drew a picture of it. And I'm going to, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this right now, what it looks like. Zach, pull it up and take a look at it. Let me know what you think Lamb looks like.
Oh, jeez. Seriously, dude?
Yeah. Well, just describe it for those who aren't watching.
Well, basically, it looks like an alien. I mean, it does. Elongated head.
Right.
I don't like. It's just so classic.
Now,
Small
he says
eyes.
this is not a drawing. He said this is a portrait. He said, like, he sat there and allowed me to draw, like, to do a portrait of him.
It's not very flattering.
Right. And the one thing that we should point out is that the eyes, the nose, and the mouth are all like down at the very bottom of this elongated head, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. But now, like, maybe like put your thumb over the eyes, nose, and mouth, and then look at where a classic gray alien's eyes would be, and tell me what you kind of see there.
Oh, almost like like the opposite of a shadow, right? So it's like lighter.
It's like a light pencil drawing of it, right?
Wild.
It's so weird.
Ugh.
It is so weird. And I mean, this is long before like people are talking about little gray aliens.
Of course,
with
right?
big bulging eyes and that sort of thing.
It's totally, way ahead of that, right? So
Lamb described himself as belonging to a, quote, an order of ancient alien beings that are from a dimension that's beyond what our perception of time is.
Okay. Classic answer. That's what it always is.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Huh.
Like, what is that? That's
It's
crazy.
classic.
Okay. You've hung tight this long hearing wacky stories about Aleister Crowley, and you're saying, Tim, you started out the podcast saying this is a conspiracy theory podcast. Where's the conspiracy theory?
I was going to keep you honest here. Thank you.
Go ahead, ask me.
Where's the conspiracy theory?
Right. Okay. I got one for you. I found
Bring
one
it.
for you. Okay. So, as you may or may not have guessed, Aleister Crowley's very elaborate lifestyle that I didn't even allude to half the things he did. This guy, world traveler, just met everyone, talked to everyone, went everywhere, did every known drug known to mankind and everything in between. Come to find out, money only lasts so long.
Oh, wow.
He burned through it.
You're kidding
He
me.
burned through his fortune and found himself in the early 1920s more or less homeless. Like, just nothing. He was just like sleeping on couches of like people that still kind of hung on to this Thelema sort of thing.
Wow. Okay.
And he was in England at the time, and he was living with a friend and fellow occultist and also well-known writer Frank Harris, if you know Frank Harris. Anyway, Frank Harris at the time lived with his girlfriend, lover, the American expat Nellie O'Hara. Now, while Aleister Crowley was living with Frank Harris, Nellie's best friend, an American by the name of Pauline Pierce, was staying with them. Okay? So, remember what I talked about when I said kind of described what sex magic
Yeah,
is.
magic with a K, right?
Yeah, that's it. And how a lot of the spells involved multiple people. Yeah, okay. So in his diary, in Aleister Crowley's diary, he describes during the time that Pauline Pierce is there, he describes doing this very complicated spell that he completed called the Supreme Ordeal. And by the way, he has the coolest names for spells ever, by the way. Sure. The Supreme Ordeal is a sex magic ritual aimed at achieving the rank of Ipsimus, which is basically to be higher than all the gods, master of all modes of existence. So, I mean, this guy does not settle for second place.
Sounds awesome.
It's like, we're going to do this sex magic ritual. I'm going to be like bigger than God.
Right.
Are you guys in? They're like, yeah, dude, we're in. Let's do it. And they complete it. And the spell, as he wrote it out, takes multiple attendants to, by the way, if you have small ears listening, now's the time to do something. Arouse him by every means possible and sexually exhaust him by every means possible while administering every stimulant known to the physician. Or Zach likes to call it Tuesday.
Hey-o. Dude, that is so insane, man.
This is like the wickedest man alive.
Oh, man. Okay.
The great beast 666.
Right.
Okay. Pauline Pierce. She goes back to the States. And a little more than 8 months later, she gives birth to a baby girl. That's June 8th, 1925. Pauline gives birth to a baby girl named Barbara. So Barbara Pierce grows up and she marries a guy by the name of George Herbert Walker Bush. They have a kid that becomes the President of the United States. Is George W. Bush the grandson of Aleister Crowley? Maybe.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Whoa.
What do you think?
No comment. That is insane.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. And by the way, if you didn't know, we do have another show every other week on our Patreon feed. You can check that out at patreon.com/crackpot podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you will get a episode just like this one every single week in your podcast machine. But hey, rate, review, subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local magician about our podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.